Right. Well, anyway, he works at that same national security part of NBC that those two women that wrote this article work for. So,
How do you even keep a job if you're not in a fake position where you're letting anybody write an article for you? I mean, that just has to show you what these people really are.
right. So anyway, moving on from the CTI leak stuff. This was what, yesterday? FBI warns ransomware assault threatens U.S. healthcare system. Cyber attacks involve ransomware, which can only be attacks, which can only be unlocked if you pay the bribe, essentially. So federal agencies, it's the FBI and CISA, by the way, they're saying they have credible information that they won't tell you of an increase in imminent cybercrime threat to U.S. hospitals and healthcare providers specifically, these specific places where they have put these CTI like people, no one knows who they are. I mean, the CTI like thing, if you just think about it and you just take out like the Microsoft and the Unit 8200 stuff, and you're like, why would you let a group of anonymous people that aren't being vetted by anything official, just like the founders of the group, and let them into the most vulnerable infrastructure of the US? I mean,
It's
just
a no-brainer.
whoa.
It's incredibly that's the same point. And all you have to do is insert some other entity there, and it's this horrible weakness and security risk, right? It is no matter what, is your point. No matter who is in that position, it's a potential risk that people with motives of their own could let you, whether be there or let somebody else in who then has access to things that could affect your safety, your family, your
Right.
livelihood. You know, that's not something we should be allowing.
Right. So this was this warning was the FBI, DHS's CISA, Chris Krebs, who we just talked about, and HHS, which, as we've talked about numerous times, insanely corrupt, Robert Kadlec, Alex Azar, all of those guys, HHS. Okay. I mean, just really crazy that this is happening right now. But wait until you see the people they're actually citing for this, like this company. Well, we talked about it earlier. Remember how I mentioned FireEye at the beginning? The guy that used to head FireEye is now on the board at vice chair of Cyber Reasons Board. He's on Team 8. He's on this Unit 8200 companies. Mandiant is a subsidiary of FireEye, and they're the guys out here saying there's threats to the hospital system.
You know, and to your point before about making it seem like there's other groups, even in regard to Iran, it's kind of the same idea here, right? They use their, public-private partnerships and their shell companies and their subsidiaries to make it seem like there's all these people on the same opinion, which really comes down to an entity driving it.
Right. So CISA leader, CISA being the Chris Krebs agency at DHS, puts the health sector project on the level of the election security initiative. Right? So he's prioritizing protection of the election system and the healthcare system. By the way, Microsoft also has its own like AI telehealth branch that they would love to see rolled out in hospitals. I wonder if Chris Krebs promotes that just like he promotes Election Guard all day long.
Well, we see the blending of these narratives. I mean, we've been talking about it in the past episode too, that there seems to be just one event that will end up tying all of this together, right? Biological aspect shows up in this whole attack, and suddenly now it all works together with the contact tracing and COVID-19 and the whole thing, and that even the headline seems to suggest that there's going to be a converging of these things.
Exactly. It certainly seems that way. So this article we're going to look at a little more in depth and just look at the experts they're citing for this threat and who they are. You'll be surprised, or maybe you won't. We'll see. So several hospitals targeted a new wave of ransom attacks. So now it's gone from a warning, okay, to several hospitals are now actively being targeted right before the election. And I mean, you can watch the CNN lady here, but she makes it sound really super doomsday-tacular. Surprising, right? So anyway, several hospitals across the US have been targeted. So it went from the warning came out, and immediately after targeting, they're being attacked. Okay, so CISA issues a warning advisory on Wednesday regarding ransomware activity targeting healthcare facilities. Again, it's CISA, the FBI, and HHS.
Are they, so they're saying targeted. Are they saying that they were actually attacked?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a little bit of a shadowy part right there. Because if you were targeting somebody, you're not necessarily attacking them just yet, right?
A Trump administration official who's anonymous told CNN that several hospitals have been targeted in the attacks over the past 2 days.
Interesting.
While it's still early, the incidents may be connected, and we're investigating. I wonder who they will blame. We'll see what happens. Anyway, all of this, right? experts with Mandiant, a cybersecurity firm, said they identified at least 3 attacks on Tuesday and 1 on Wednesday. They're partnered with CISA, okay? As I mentioned earlier, Mandiant, you can see their site here, but if you look at the URL fireeye.com/Mandiant, and who are they partnered with? Microsoft and Mandiant announced their strategic partnership. Very good to see that. And, you know, here they are talking about FireEye again. And in case you forgot, here's this guy on Team8 and all this stuff. CEO and executive chairman at FireEye right before joining all these Israeli intelligence linked companies. So that's normal. And by normal, not normal at all. And so they cite their main guy here, talking about, you know, he's calling this the most significant cybersecurity threat we've ever seen in the US. Get ready for your cyber 9/11, people.
What? How can you even possibly make the argument that it's the most significant cyber? They're floating things that aren't even verified, and that's already the most significant cybersecurity threat.
They're drumming up the fear because
Totally.
there's going to be some event, obviously. I mean, it's pretty much as clear as day at
really
this
is.
point. And then here's a lady, look, Allison Liska, an intelligence analyst for Recorded Future, said that his company knows of at least 6 attacks in the last 24 hours, and there were probably more.
That's
person
probably.
from Recorded Future. Remember the name Recorded Future? I'm going to show you who these people are in a second, and you're just going to be like, what? But listen to what this person's saying from there. It is absolutely the biggest thing we've ever seen. In terms of ransomware, it's the biggest attack we've ever seen. It's crushing to see so many hospitals hit at the same time. And then we have Chris Krebs from CISA being in here. But before I show you the other people, who is Recorded Future? Who could they possibly be? Well, let's go to their website and about, and look, they have this convenient little timeline about their history. But let's go to the beginning and see who created this company. I'm sure you'll be surprised. Oh, it's just Google Ventures and the CIA's In-Q-Tel setting up Recorded Future and now saying, oh man.
Well, you know, you're talking in the beginning about, you know, the pro bono protection of these hospitals, right? And, you know, you're watching this, all these hospitals are about to be attacked. It's the same idea we just talked about with Carbine 911 and the justification. I mean, it's so crazy transparent.
Yeah, Microsoft and Google have both been putting tons of money in health initiatives and making new healthcare stuff. I mean, we talked about, like, in September or something, I did that report on Google and the Pentagon teaming up to do AI predictive diagnosis of cancer and that it's going to be COVID-19. I mean, these companies that are backing these people want this to happen. I mean, they have a financial incentive for it to happen, is my point. Okay, so then the other people they cite, besides the FireEye Mandiant guy and the lady from the dude from the company funded by In-Q-Tel and Google, is Chris Krebs himself, director of CISA, and then Microsoft's corporate vice president. Okay, Tom Burt. But they don't tell you that Chris Krebs also used to be Microsoft, or that Mandiant is in a strategic partnership with Microsoft. So they don't mention that at all. So these experts all look like they're different people and different experts, but look at those connections. They're essentially like all tied up in the same crap, right? So that's how a lot of this reporting is. And so we have CISA and the FBI and HHS making all these warnings, and CISA in particular, right? But it turns out, we've talked about before this on the show, but I just wanted to bring it up to drive home this point. This FCC ruling that the US government supported was fought against by the people who maintain the critical infrastructure in the United States. Utility companies and first responders, i.e. 911 call, first responders, 911 call systems, the people that work on those, okay, fought against this ruling that the FCC wanted. They're the ones that tried to keep this decision of the FCC's from going through, and they lost. The FCC won, and the government celebrated this. Why is this important? So, because basically what the ruling did is that it opened up the 6 gigahertz frequency for unlicensed Wi-Fi technologies, but doing so, as it notes here, creates an increased risk of interference to utility and public safety activities. So and it was fought against because utilities use that exact band for mission critical communications. Interference could negatively impact the monitoring and repair of power lines. They're saying these people are gonna, Iran, China, whatever, gonna hack the power grid. This ruling just happened in early October. Why isn't CISA complaining? They're supposed to protect our infrastructure. Why are they not listening to what the utility companies are saying? They're saying this is a threat to them, but the government is pushing for it and made the decision and is supporting it. And they're ignoring the actual people that protect and maintain the critical infrastructure, right? But they're issuing all these warnings about hospitals, but they're not worried about this stuff. Where are their warnings about the FCC ruling?
Right. So
They
they effectively make it more potential, it's easier to effectively hack or invade, affect or manipulate, and they're going to use that to then blame for anybody they want, as it would appear, right? So again, their actions they're taking are leading to the situation that justifies the need they want to drive in all of these things, and the people in making those choices after the fact are the people that have been focused on Iran the whole time. Perfect.
Right. Well, you know what's crazy too? I mean, in the next video, we're going to do all our stuff on Philadelphia. Philadelphia just Verizon and AT&T just started putting stuff all up in the 6 gigahertz band of Philadelphia. They just did it. And remember back here, our investors, AT&T, and the next group we're going to talk about, you're going to see Verizon all up in there.
And all these companies, by the way, take notice of how wildly all of them are profiting from this situation where people can barely feed their families. It's just coincidence that they're all tied in every time with the agenda in separate places, right? It's very, very clear.
Yeah, it's super outrageous. So anyway, with that being said, we're going to move on to another organization you've probably never heard of that I actually didn't learn about until pretty recently. I'd seen them around, which is why when they popped up, I decided to look into them. But I mean, this group is really crazy. And when you see their members, wow, dude. But anyway, this is their history. They were, this is so crazy. If any of you guys know who this dude is, I mean, this history, rightly so, will sound very clownish to you because this dude is super corrupt. Anyway, after years of prosecuting cyber financial fraud crimes with no end in sight, the New York County District Attorney, Cyrus Vance Jr., knew that there had to be a better way to confront the cybercrime epidemic. So he teams up with the City of London Police Commissioner. Remember, the City of London is where all the bankers are in the UK, okay? And arguably the center of like the global banking cartel is there anyway. So their police commissioner, this guy, and the chairman of the board of the Center for Internet Security, we'll get to them later, just believed that something had to be done. And this resulted in a coalition to take on the uphill battle against cybercrime and a recognition that we need to come together as a global community to have a transformational impact on cybersecurity. Knowing the potential that an organization like the Global Cyber Alliance could have, the DA, meaning Cyrus Vance Jr., committed $25 million in criminal asset forfeiture proceeds to fund this critical work over a 5-year period. So stuff they stole from people they arrested was used to set this up.
It seems to be clear, by the way, that asset forfeiture is a wildly unconstitutional concept, and half the time these things are happening because they think you might use them to commit a crime. Right. There's a difference between criminal asset forfeiture and civil asset forfeiture, but at the same time, we're talking about them making an accusation and using that to remove your money from you. And it can be as simple as something as, growing cannabis in a state where it's legal, So the fact that it's just the corruption overflowing. They're taking your money and giving it to things that will be used to control your perception and manipulate what's going on. It's just incredible to me.
But Cyrus Vance Jr. is super known for being ultra corrupt. He didn't go after Harvey Weinstein, even though he was supposed to. He was supposed to go after some people in the Trump family because of different crimes, criminal fraud charges, and he didn't after he received paybacks from those same people he didn't prosecute but was supposed to. Okay. So, and also if you know anything about like this particular Manhattan district attorney's office, I mean, it's super known for corruption and ties to organized crime. They'll be in my Epstein book because a lot of things went on there with Roy Cohn, among other people. So keep that in mind. This is the guy that decided to set this up because he just wants to take down those naughty criminals, but he wouldn't go after the powerful criminals. So as we'll see in a little bit, basically, in my opinion, this Global Cyber Alliance is basically like a cybersecurity mafia, and you either join their alliance or they will, hack the crud out of you. Anyway, The Center for Internet Security that was made up with this guy has a lot of interesting people. I don't know if it noted in here, but it talked about them. Here it goes, meeting with Cyrus Vance Jr. met with this William Pelgrin guy, and that's where he got the idea, and then they went to the London police people. Okay, so who is this guy? Well, he currently manages an exclusive cybersecurity service that helps protect corporate executives, celebrities, politicians, and other high-value individuals from successful cyber attacks. That's interesting. He's also co-chair of Andrew Cuomo's Cybersecurity Advisory Board, the same Andrew Cuomo that was like, hey, I want to have Eric Schmidt and Bill Gates reimagine life in New York thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, and who also sold out his state to be have 5 smart cities built in the state of New York next year, all by companies tied to Israeli tech. So that Andrew Cuomo, that guy, among numerous other things that he's done that are super corrupt, but those are the ones that I think are relevant to the topic at hand. So anyway, Pelgrin served 3 terms as chair of the National Council of ISACs. Remember we talked about in the CTI League just now, the healthcare ISAC, the Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Well, there's a national one of them, and this guy was in charge of it. It's to advance the physical and cybersecurity of the critical infrastructures of North America. Okay, so the critical infrastructure of North America, they're saying, is going to be hacked, is all tied up in here. Pelgrin also served as a commission of the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They'll be important in a little bit, to brief Barack Obama, President 44, on critical cybersecurity issues. This is an important group that, well, the acronym for this think tank is CSIS. I mean, this is a big deal. So remember that name. We'll get to them in a little bit. This is another board member at the Center for Internet Security, National Security Council under Papa Bush, Bill Clinton, and Deputy DHS Secretary under Obama. Okay, so national security state on the Center for Internet Security. Okay, their other board member, Goldman Sachs, before that, Deutsche Bank, and advisory board to an unnamed current advisor to a director of an unnamed US intelligence agency, probably the CIA because they don't like to name them. They like to be more anonymous, I guess, because, you know, people rightly so associate a litany of crimes with the CIA. He's also on the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. Of course, I want to draw your attention for those of you that have either read Christopher Berlin's work on 9/11 or ever done your own investigation to the software side of 9/11. You may recognize this name. We'll get to him later. Annette Yorin. Anyway, the vision of the Global Cyber Alliance is a secure, trustworthy internet that enables social and economic progress. So things that we don't think, that these people don't think are trustworthy and that don't enable progress per their subjective opinion of what that means, those things have to go. We have to, you know, protect the internet security.
And
right?
this brings to me mind the discussion if you've written about the legacy systems and all this. And what really stands out from the standing back of the whole picture here is that, you know, they're seemingly, you know, because we almost could see COVID-19 right now as kind of like a separate part of this discussion. As we keep saying, they're coming together, and this seems to make that tie for me, where they're basically arguing that the, you know, all of this, the internet, our cybersecurity in general, all of this is just archaic, and we need to be better at it. We need to reimagine it, and that builds to this point where they're removing that for this technocratic, you know, kind of reimagining, which as we keep pointing out, very easily ties over into this COVID-19 thing, which is with just one event or one action. You know, it's more, I recommend you all check out that legacy. What was the name of that article, by the way, in regard to the legacy systems? That's a really important one for this.
Techno tyranny. Yeah, that's like one of the more important things I pointed out, I think, all year. And it just keeps coming up time and again. Just, you know, Eric Schmidt is basically running the national security state right now. It's out of control. And Henry Kissinger is calling him his best friend, and no one is paying attention to that guy. Everyone got on Bill Gates' case with COVID-19, which I agree they should have done, because obviously Bill Gates, there's a lot to expose with that guy, but like we need to be paying attention to Eric Schmidt too. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So anyway, what I argue is in this vision, because check out what else they say. Realizing this vision requires tackling a big problem, reducing cyber risk. So the answer to cyber risk is cybersecurity. And all of these cybersecurity companies like Cyber Reason, right, waiting in the wings to come and make the internet safe. Okay, so they're going to make it, there's these hacks. They're going to say we have to clamp down on the internet for that. We have to clamp down on the internet for hate speech too, which they're tying up with this whole thing also. I mean, they are gunning hard to like really clamp down on the internet.
Think
With
about like
whatever
the
they're
war on
planning.
terror. Like, are you ever safe from terror, right? It's not possible to remove risk from your life, but that's why they always make these unattainable kind of just nebulous goals that they can just forever go towards, or hypothetically.
But what's notable is that most of the, pretty much all actually, of the cybersecurity companies that are part of this alliance are AI cybersecurity companies.
Right.
They use an AI algorithm to do the cybersecurity. This is the way to usher in their fourth industrial revolution, where AI is at the center, is to get, you need a new cybersecurity software. It's all going to be AI cybersecurity. And then bam, AI's in your systems. And from there, they can expand it however they want. And some of these companies that we'll be getting into that are like this, even shadier than Cyber Reason, believe it or not. I mean, this is where the spooks have been, and this is where they've been working, including the people who were involved in the software side of 9/11, as we'll get to later. So anyway, we approach this challenge of reducing cyber risk by building partnerships and creating a global community that stands stronger together. I mean, this is like, a global effort. This is all about international collaboration. If you look at their members, which we'll do in a second, it's the UK, it's mostly the UK and the US, and then Unit 8200 companies is this alliance. Okay, and some of these companies we've already seen. So who are their founders and funders? Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, okay, who's openly, by the way, created a data firm literally right after, well, not that long ago, actually, after the Transition Integrity Project stuff happened that we'll talk about next time. He set up this data firm to seed this narrative that there's going to be a red mirage, as they're calling it, where it looks like Trump's going to win and Republicans are going to win. And then these mail-in ballots will start to flood in, and then they'll throw it for Biden. And then, of course, the Republicans will be like, that's voter fraud. And that whole narrative, we can thank Bloomberg for that. Remember this when we're talking about all the pre-planned election chaos. Bloomberg is a key person there. Anyway, we have the Center for Internet Security we already talked about. City of London Police. Craig Newmark Philanthropies. Weren't we just talking about him? That's weird. And who's this? Yeah, the Manhattan DA's office and the Hewlett Foundation, which I'm pretty sure is the Hewlett Packard people, but not 100% on that. Anyway, Premium Partners. Premium Partners also fund the Global Cyber Alliance. So these are the main funders, and these are the other funders. We have Craig Newmark Philanthropies again. So Craig Newmark has been dumping lots and lots of money into this, which is interesting. He, has literally been really obsessed with fighting, like crushing independent media. He and Piero Midiar of eBay and PayPal, which is why we see PayPal here also, I would argue, have been really at the forefront of these establishment efforts to really quash independent media, along with Facebook and Google. Google's not here, but they might as well be. Microsoft, MasterCard, who's rolling out their trust stamp digital identity thing for COVID-19 that ties up all your financial activity with whether or not you've gotten enough vaccines. We have a private banking group from the UK, the Hewlett Foundation again, and this is a AI cybersecurity company. I'll just show them to you. So again, they have a fun little timeline that tells you about how they started. Oh, it started when they partnered with PayPal, Yahoo, and Google. Okay, and so we know who's backing them, and then it became JP Morgan Chase, PayPal, Facebook, and Netflix, and LinkedIn. Okay, so all of these Silicon Valley companies back these people, essentially, and they were spun off of Cisco Systems, by the way, for people that are interested in them. And look, they're really interested in presidential campaign security.
Shocker.
About nation state attacks.
There was one though before we go forward. Okay, here the ICANN I find very interesting, because this is in regard to the internet, right? We're talking about people who are using their positions to, stop fake news, right? That's a really important position, and you could just see how it's setting it up to be able to control all of these things. I find that to be really interesting. Are you familiar with what this is in regard to domain names and the control? That's a very powerful thing to have influence over the controlling because you could think about it like this. If we're talking about people that are censoring your, you know, your YouTube channel or things like this. This is like a whole nother level of going from like the domain level. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that, if they have that
Ripping
kind
the
of power,
website out by the roots. They did this to
right?
Gab,
Exactly.
the social media alternative, a couple of years ago. They literally just pulled them out by the domain. Their site was gone. Right. So with this powerful partner, they'd be able to do that to a lot of sites in theory. Anyway, there are other partners. We have a lot of big companies like Adobe. We have health insurance companies like Aetna that are huge. We have healthcare centers. All the things they're saying are going to be hacked. Cars, remember Cybereason talking about hacking cars? We have the car ISAC, the auto ISAC here. Bank of America, Barclays, okay, Broadcom, which owns Symantec, a major cybersecurity company, the European Union, Citibank,
It's a lot.
CrowdStrike. Remember the people behind the saying that WikiLeaks, their obtaining of the DNC emails and the Podesta emails and all that stuff was Russia. That trustworthy group, not anyway. They're here. Okay, Cyber NC is here. I'm not going to talk about this article much, but I wrote about Cyber NC in this article, and they are also very deeply tied to Unit 8200 and. Not good news, not good to see them here. Anyway, a lot of other Deloitte, something, another company, consulting company mainly, that's been hiring a lot of CIA people in recent years, and they've been popping up with a lot of things we've talked about recently on the show. Let's see. I mean, there's so many companies here.
Yeah.
France's Ministry of Justice, France's National Police are here.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no,
There's
I mean,
so many, even like some that may not stand out to people because they, you know, but
New
there's a
York
lot of
again.
smaller companies in here that are seem very relevant for, you know, I mean, that that's an incredible list of companies. Like, I bet you we could go through each one of these and find things that would be relevant.
Oh, totally. Well, I mean, I didn't go through all of these. There's just some I know that from my research over the past couple of years, right? The Internet Society, IronNet Cybersecurity, that's former NSA director's Keith Alexander's company that gets a bunch of money from Team 8, who we were talking to earlier. ISACA has a big chapter in Philadelphia that'll be relevant in our next video probably, because they have a big presence in that particular city. Moving on. I may miss a few. There's some, this is Saudi Arabia. I think it's part of their government.
Lookout is interesting. And there's Metropolitan Police in there too.
Right. Oh, did I miss them?
Right. The blue one right in the middle right there.
Oh, right. Michigan's government. Isn't that where Governor, Whitmer, right? Isn't she governor of Michigan, or is that Minnesota?
I think it was Minnesota. Let me look it up.
Anyway, Martian McLennan is here for people that remember the software side of 9/11.
Michigan.
And all of that stuff.
It was Michigan.
Very interesting to see Martian McLennan here. MITRE Corporation, which was with P-TECH and NORAD on 9/11 and are a very shady government contractor that's been sucking up a bunch of your data under the guise of COVID-19. The National Security Institute, we talked about them yesterday. Several Cybereason, 2 Cybereason employees and one of their main advisors, David Chris, part of this institute alongside people like Keith Alexander, Michael Hayden, former NSA and CIA director, and Paul Wolfowitz, among other spooks and former Pentagon officials that are here. New York's Economic Development Corporation. I mean, New York State is all up in here. I mean, obviously Cuomo would be down with this if he gave the keys of the kingdom to Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt already. Palo Alto is a huge company run by Unit 8200 people. PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big 5 auditing firms in the entire world. Here's France's government again. I mean, there is a ton of stuff here. It's pretty wild. RSA is, which is linked to, we talked about them yesterday. Sepio Systems, we also talked about yesterday. Chairman of the board is Tamer Pardo, ex-head of Mossad. Robert Bigman, former CISO at the CIA, who advises Cybereason, also is here. This is Canada's Royal Canadian Mounted Police, also part of this global cyber alliance. I mean, this list is huge. Someone should really go through this stuff in more detail. Sophos, Sony, Swiss Internet Security Alliance. I mean, the list is massive. in the city UK, which is actually, I think they're here they are, the leading Britain's most powerful financial lobby group. That's reassuring.
Right. So why would a lobbying group be involved with this, right? I mean, in a global cyber alliance, because
some of the biggest banks, biggest
right.
banksters in the world are backing this.
Well, you can understand why a bank might, if taking their narrative on at face value that it's about cybersecurity, but a lobbying company, like, it just shows you that they're trying to make sure that this gets seen the right way, or pushed the right way.
Then we have Verizon, mentioning them about the 6 gigahertz stuff just a second ago, and the U.S. Secret Service. Remember who was simulating stuff with cyber reason? We talked about DHS already and how that's relevant because of Chris Krebs and CISA and all of this stuff. But the Secret Service was involved in all of those election doomsday simulations. And here they are, part of this as well. Pretty interesting to see. So anyway, this is the guy that heads Global Cyber Alliance. Anything you want to say before I move to this?
Oh, no. I was just going to say US Bank was at the bottom there as well. Just more. I was just looking into the companies. There's
tons of companies. We could spend all day talking about this thing. But the point is, these guys are something to pay attention to. Anyway, Philip Rettinger is the president and CEO of the Global Cyber Alliance. In 2009, he was the deputy undersecretary for the National Protection and Programs Directorate at and the director of the National Cybersecurity Center at DHS. And he was also the first executive director of the Pentagon Cyber Crime Center.
And just so we're clear, I find that to be just as alarming that we continue to see U.S. government entities or prior entities who are on boards or working with companies that are driving the agendas that are currently being pushed by people that are in that position. That it's just the revolving door idea that we keep seeing in our politics. And then you add the layer of Israeli government or other foreign entities, it just makes it even more alarming. But understand that these people being in these positions is suspects, that they're making all of this happen from an outside level. It's alarming.
Just like Chris Krebs, before this guy was in these top national security positions for cybersecurity, chief trustworthy infrastructure strategist at Microsoft.
Of course.
And also Sony's senior vice president and chief information security officer. And Andrew Cuomo's cybersecurity advisory board. Wow, Cuomo's been busy, you can tell. He's also a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies Strategic Technologies program. You know who else is in this program at CSIS? Nathan Gleicher, who is the head of cybersecurity policy at Facebook. All of those blog posts saying Facebook just unraveled an Iranian disinformation network or a Russian disinformation network. This guy. And he was also, before being at Facebook, on the director of cybersecurity policy at the National Security Council at the White House. And you know who else was on the National Security Council at that time? The guy we talked about yesterday who co-hosted the Operation Blackout simulation with Sorry Reason, Ari Schwartz, was also there alongside this guy. And he also used to prosecute cybercrime at the U.S. Department of Justice, right? And now he's at Facebook, and he's part of this think tank, which describes themselves as the #1 think tank in the U.S. It's worth pointing out one of the top guys at CSIS right now, Dov Zakheim, comptroller of the Pentagon during 9/11, which is important because remember September 10th, 2001? They announced, trillions were missing from the Pentagon's budget. Dov Zakheim was comptroller. It was his job to find it. And then what do you know? The part of the Pentagon that gets hit on 9/11 is the accounting office where they were trying to find all that money.
Yeah. And then we all just forgot about that. And now we're over $20 trillion. And, it's interesting how that works.
And of course, most of this year, we have talked a lot about the Dark Winter bioterror simulation in June 2001, which was answering what was then the Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Studies and is now the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. But that exercise was funded by this think tank, CSIS. These guys are shady. So the fact that they're all tied up in this is unfortunate.
It just seems like an intelligence front. I mean, if you got all these people that are essentially... Right. I mean, they're just coming. Like, you have to ask whether that's the point. And this whole thing was set up so people that are currently spooks or spies or whatever you want to call them just end up, they're still that, right? The argument that there's no such thing as former CIA and so on, you wonder whether these people in these positions pretending to be former anything are actually just playing that role,
Right. And I just remembered something. So Dov Zakheim, who I just mentioned, who's a big guy here now, is also on the board of directors at the Atlantic Council. And what do you know? Facebook's fact-checking partners are also the Atlantic Council. Maybe it has something to do with like this whole tie-in. I don't know. Just a guess. So who's another lady in the same cool program, Denise Zhang, who used to be chief of staff and lead science and engineering technical advisor for DARPA's Plan X. Maybe you haven't heard of Plan X, but it was the secretive Pentagon research program looking to replace human hackers with AI. So AI will just hack you now. So, if there's going to be like a cyber 9/11, it's possible we could actually see that be done by artificial intelligence algorithms, because this Plan X has been, they've been working on this for years. It's really crazy.
And remember, half the time when they mention stuff like that, it's because it's not like, oh, we just discovered this. It's because, yeah, we discovered it 10 years ago and now we're using it. But now we're floating it out to you. So you think about it like that could be what's happening right now is the point.
Right. And so CSIS, I wanted to point out some of the things, this particular program that's tied up in this global cyber alliance and Facebook now and all this stuff, what they're saying, right? What this program, this type of content they put out. So they hosted a thing with this guy that's currently in Congress, Jim Himes, who represents Connecticut. He talks about the importance of creating a better flow of people and information between the intelligence community and the private sector. This could, building a closer relationship with foreign counterparts on research and development. This is a lot of what the Global Cyber Alliance wants to do. So they talks about reinforcing innovation units, i.e. giving them more money to the CIA's NQTEL and the intelligence community's equivalent of DARPA IARPA. To support change, they say. Yikes.
Kind of sounds like the public-private partnership analogy excuse that they're using. And as you said, they're not even proven to actually expedite anything, and they're just saying that.
No, it's Mussolini's definition of fascism, corporatism, where the private and public sectors merge to screw over everyone else, basically. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And here, right on that point, the CSIS was talking about the importance of a robust relationship between the public and private sectors in the area of national security innovation. Just like Eric Schmidt, he's like, let's merge that stuff, Silicon Valley, merge it with the national security state. That's totally normal. No, that's a recipe for nasty fascism. Anyway, I just wanted to show really quick who funds this crap. The United States government. The T here in the program area is the technology thing we were just looking at. So it's the United States government out of the governments, but these are the corporations. A lot of overlap with the global, the global cyber alliance. Bank of America, right? Part of the global cyber alliance funds this particular group, Northrop Grumman. This is, close to $1 million.
What just, were you on the wrong page first? I saw Boeing at the top for a second and then it changed.
Oh, well, I was, it's down here.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, keep going. I just want, Boeing's a big point there.
Yeah, but so these are the people that fund this think tank, but not all of them fund the technology sector. The CSIS is a big think tank, so they have a lot of different sectors. Like if you actually look on here, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funnels a ton of money into their like global health think tank area as well, alongside Merck and Gilead and people like that. So, they're funded by a bunch of corporations, specifically oil companies like Chevron, BP. But anyway, so I only highlighted the ones that fund the technology program that I just pointed out.
It's interesting to think about the possibility that the money that was taken from you and given to companies under the guise of, stimulus and whatever else could have just been used by these companies to then fund these programs. That's what I found interesting.